Hi, my name's Sasan Kesravi with Proteus Debate Academy. We are a organizations, two of us. We're a YouTube channel. Uh, and we're dedicated to try to bring a little bit more equity into high school, middle school, whatever, speech and debate, also college, but doesn't seem to be as much of a problem in college, in my opinion. So we make videos to try to help people who don't have as much coaching or as experienced coaches. A lot of those videos are on this channel. You can click on the stuff and watch them. There's a lot of lecture videos. Recently we've shifted over to mostly analysis videos, which Paul doesn't like doing as much, but they're easy. I don't have to plan anything ahead of time. And those of you who already follow the channel will know that our output has significantly slowed down, but that's just because it's just a crazy time of year. It's championship season. We're out trying to get our schools, national titles. So it's not a lot of time. I got like an hour 20 minutes today to make a quick video. So I'm gonna see if I can get like a quick analysis out. But sometimes these things last 3 hours. So maybe I'll work, I'll come back, I'll finish it. I don't know. This is also a public forum one. That's fine with me, but if you guys would like me to do an analysis video on any other kind of debate format, I'd love to. My favorite debate format is Parley. I'd love to do a Parley round analysis, but I'm just doing stuff that people ask. Somebody asked for this round. A couple people asked for policy rounds, but they were like NDT out rounds, which I'm not qualified to judge. Like, that's such a hyper specific thing to that format and that level that my outside opinion on it wouldn't matter. But if you're watching this and you think you could do an analysis video of that, or at least just give some insight on a particular round, the demand is out there. And this is really easy. I got a little camera here. I got free recording software, free editing software, and I just put my phone on a book, and then that's this. So you can do that very easily. Let's get going. I forget. This is Lake Mary Prep versus Theodore Roosevelt. Somebody asked for this. I don't know anything about the round. I guess it was 2018. Probably that would have been a while ago. If you want me to do a different one, you can let me know, and I will do it when I have the time. This was probably requested months ago. All right. Haha, you can't see. Can't see anything because I'm a goddamn amateur. Do that. Boom. My bad.
Resolve, the United States federal government should impose price controls on the pharmaceutical industry. Our sole contention is correcting the market. There's a crisis in the United States revolving around the affordability of pharmaceutical drugs. Henry Waxman of the Commonwealth Fund reports in 2017, drug prices have increased 10% annually, exceeding inflation. Court of Market Watch corroborates in 2017, finding the price of most common medications have increased by 85%. Dana Sarnak of Johns Hopkins University further explains that compared to other high-income developing countries, U.S. prices are 117% higher and health outcomes are significantly worse. Pharmaceutical companies are at fault. Fox of the Harvard Business Review in 2017 reports drug companies utilize a number of tactics to thwart competition, including bribing generic companies to keep cheap alternatives off the market, filing citizen petitions to delay generics from being federally approved, and restricting small business access to drug samples for testing. Big Pharma has consolidated the market with monopoly-esque tactics, preventing affordable options from entering the market. Even generic drugs, supposedly more affordable, are driven off the market by Big Pharma. Large branded companies spike their prices right before generic entry to ensure high price points for both drugs. Dave of International Medicine quantifies in 2017 an average price increase of 30% increases generic drug prices by 60% as well. Thus, Dean Baker of New York Times concludes in 2016, prices are hundreds of times the normal free market price. When the market fails, the government steps in to put it back on track. Price controls reverse this in two ways. First, directly setting the price. Price controls means that firms aren't allowed to set prices above a certain level, leading to lower prices for consumers. No matter how much the industry is consolidated or exploits the market, the end result must be lower prices. This has empirically happened in similar countries that impose price controls. Marzak of the Croatian Medical Journal in 2002 reports, all EU countries imposed price ceilings and saw a reduction of prices by 25%. In the bigger market of the United States, Octos of the Cochrane Library quantifies in 2014, price controls in the US reduced costs by 39% in just 1 year. Second is stopping consolidation. Sorcher Public Citizen magazine reports in 2016, over the past few years, it's seen the consolidation of the pharmaceutical industry as larger companies captured 64% of the global market, up from 28% in 2007. Companies consolidate to hike up prices. Gagnon of Globalization Health Journal in 2017 reports that several companies dominate non-competitive markets by cornering niche markets through killer acquisitions so they can substantially increase prices. Price controls reverses this, since they remove the reason that companies monopolize in the first place. If they cannot increase prices, they have no incentive to acquire. But additionally, it makes it inefficient to have a monopoly in the first place, since they can no longer offset the high development costs with having high prices. Sued of the Rand Corporation in 2008 explains direct price controls will reduce big pharma revenues by 16%. For these two reasons, Brecky of the Journal of Public Economics quantifies in 2010, under a price control system, large monopolies see a 15% reduction in brand name market share and drop in average drug prices by 30%. Correcting the market has two impacts. First, in the United States, Waxman explains that 1/3 of Americans go without taking their prescription because of high costs. Fortunately, Levy of the Hebrew University Business School quantifies in 2014, setting prices 20% lower, increasing the number of patients using drugs by 23%. This is critical. Benjamin of Public Health quantifies in 2012, approximately 125,000 deaths per year in the United States are due to non-adherence to prescriptions. Second is in the rest of the world. Ostani of The Guardian explains that Big Pharma requires that domestic governments across the world transfer all intellectual property rights to the United States, meaning they can only buy from us. This extends the U.S. monopoly globally and prevents other countries from developing generics, which is why 1.4 billion people cannot afford the patented drugs needed to save their lives, and 75% of all global HIV patients cannot access cures because they only have patented options in their area. Because medicine should give people their life instead of a receipt, we affirm.
Can you see the Marzak reference?
Yeah.
Can I see the card?
Okay. This is pretty good. The speaker is good. Okay. So what's going on here is you have a pretty decent case. There's no major issues. This person knows what they're doing. And so the criticism is getting a little bit more involved, right? All of this is to say this person is great, not doing anything obviously wrong. Anyway, here's what's bad about this case. It's not really doing much strategically. It's not really thinking about like the game and how the debate is going to go. It doesn't demonstrate a lot of round vision. It's not preempting or answering or setting up turns for anything that the opponents are going to say. What do I mean by this? This argument is basically two arguments in this case. One is drug prices are too high in the United States, let's keep them low. The other one is that in the United States has like pharmaceutical monopolies which hurt other markets. The first one's good. It's straightforward. It's clearly the biggest offense on this issue. Lives lost, really easy links to solving it. That's good. The second one is not very good for two reasons. One, the link story is a little weird, right? Like you're telling me that we're forcing the cost of drugs to be high internationally, but earlier you were telling me that the comparison point between our prices being high was compared to other countries. So are other countries high prices or are they low prices? Now, I know what the actual answer to that is, and it's small countries with blah, 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 not big industries, but the point is that that's now a line of questioning that I would try to hammer in cross-ex to try to muddy your story up a little bit. So the story's a little confusing, or at least complicated. Additionally, the impact isn't that great. Your card says that like doing the AF would lead to a 15% decrease of monopoly, like, market share? Like, what happens as a result of that, right? Like, you say we get rid of monopolies in your, like, impacts or whatever, or the way you're trying to frame it, but you don't really have evidence that says that. Your evidence says it's like a 15% decrease and like a 30% something else. Like, I don't see how that does anything for you, but also it's the same kind of impact as your first argument. So it's, if the first one gets outweighed by something through whatever means other than just a straight magnitude outweigh, so will your second impact, right? It's not shielded from anything that would affect your first argument, so it's not really doing much for you strategically. But additionally, the next level up in strategy is having your second argument not even be what you're going to collapse to and try to win on, but just preempting, like, just trying to capture whatever offense you think your opponent is going for, which I don't see a lot in public forum, but it is in partly, at least in college, at least, you know, teams that I coach, we always try to have an argument that is trying to capture what our opponent's going to go for, to at least hurt their ability, make it a little bit more of a wash on the impacts. So, for example, I'm pretty sure the negative here, this is the pharmaceutical one, probably going to go for tech and innovation and R&D, and people aren't going to invest in it and blah, blah, blah. So I would try to find some evidence that indicates how tech and innovation is being hurt. At least run that impact on the monopolies argument, right? Something to try to stop them from being able to come up in a few seconds and say what they're about to say. So all in all, it's pretty good. We'll see how their opponents do, but it's not unbeatable by any means. It could be better.
Says that price controls decrease the cost of drugs by 34%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh. Get better at sharing evidence. Why is everyone in public forums so bad at sharing evidence? Just show them the speech. You have it written down. Just give it to them at the start. Have them read along if they want.
Weenigate and contention one is lobbying. Big Pharma is ready to fight against regulations aimed at decreasing the price of drugs. Dr. Robert Peer in 2018 contextualized that Big Pharma is dumping money into Congress aimed at thwarting serious efforts to decrease the price of prescriptions. This gives Big Pharma control over Congress in two ways. First, lobbying. The CRE in 2017 explained that currently there are 153 unique organizations lobbying in Congress on behalf of drug pricing, a number that has more than quadrupled since 2013. Dr. Peer further that in 2017 alone, drug makers spent $171 million lobbying in Congress, deploying 882 lobbyists to fight against decreased prices. Second, campaign financing. Dr. Peer finds that Big Pharma has made a contribution totaling $31 million toward the campaigns of congressmen. This problem exists within both parties, as the CPR in 2018 explains that 97% of senators and 93% of representatives have received campaign donations from Big Pharma. This huge amount of control of Congress is why Dr. Peer concludes that Big Pharma has been able to beat back the proposed payment decreases received from Medicare and Medicaid, and why over half of all major decisions in this administration has favored the pharmaceutical industry. The impact is sidestepping legislation. Pharma's influence on Congress ensures that new legislation will never meaningfully affect big companies but can destroy competition in the market. Theodore in 2017 explains that manufacturers can earn high profits by lobbying for regulation that hurt competitors while developing methods to sidestep current legislation, concluding that this incentivizes firms to relocate regulatory niches where they're safe from competition. Contention 2 is monopolies. The United States competitive and free market props up small firms, enabling them to thrive.
Okay, let's start with the first contention. Not really offense, right? Like, strictly defense. It's kind of like a no solvency argument, right? You're not reading impacts to what will happen post-plan. Everything you're saying is non-unique, right? Like, pharmaceutical companies have that control currently. You don't read arguments that say this increases their control. It's not. I thought maybe it was going to be like a politics argument, like, oh, there's backlash, now they do whatever. Not that that would have been a particularly good argument, but all of this is kind of answered by fiat. Like, the question isn't will there be more regulations is should there be. And, like, of course there's barriers in the way or else there already would be. But anyway, seems pretty easy to answer, and there's no real argument here. Like, a solvency argument would say, I don't know, that it would be unconstitutional, so it gets overturned, or whatever. But all solvency arguments are really more specific to like a plan model of debate. This is just a bunch of reasons. You're just reading the inherency of the AF. Not really sure what the strategy here is. Second argument, monopolies. Not what I would go for. I mean, maybe this is like an example of what I'm talking about, where, okay, the AF's going to talk about monopolies, so we should talk about monopolies to sort of make that argument a wash and allow us more easily to shift over and collapse to our main offense. But your other argument isn't offense. I don't see what happens that is bad. But let's hear this monopolies argument.
This is especially true in the pharmaceutical industry, with Karen Kerrigan in 2018 quantifying that 57% of pharmaceutical companies are small businesses. Small firms also represent the future of the industry, with the Milken Institute in 2016 predicting that small business will represent 70% of the industry's future clinical pipeline. Unfortunately, Scott Shane in 2018 explained that government regulations such as price controls disproportionately harm small businesses in 3 ways. First is cost. Shane further that regulatory compliance places a disproportionate burden on small business because it's easier for
really? Like, that's your impact? Small businesses? Like, I don't give 2 shits about small businesses. People can't afford insulin. Like, fuck it. Make Amazon do pharmaceuticals. Like, as long as people get their fucking medicine. Yeah, this is like a really like it's not written backwards, and or bottom up, as Paul and I call it, and we have a video on this. Like, you got to write your arguments from the impacts up. It's a lot of work to research and write an argument and get all the way to the end of it, and then be like, okay, now what are the impacts gonna be? Like, the impacts are the most important thing in the round. They're how you're measuring whether you win or lose. So it doesn't really work well to make the argument and then just have whatever impact you end up with. You think of the impact first, you generally get an understanding of the topic, and then think, okay, what are all the big impacts here? And then you find the links to get there. Like, that's how debate should work. Now, that also leads to things like, you know, what I would consider to be bad teams always talking about nuclear war. But you just argue those links. Like, the idea is, like, what are the best impacts that we can get good links to? And I think you would have a lot better options here. And people have a lot fewer answers to them. Anyway.
large companies to spread out the fixed cost of adhering to legislation over more revenue. Second, skepticism. Morton and Baller in 2017 explained that high prices are uniquely important for small firms who derive their entire profit margins off 1 or 2 drugs. Indeed, Shane continues that increased regulation creates uncertainty across small firms, which blocks them from increasing investment, hiring new workers, or buying capital equipment. Third, investment. Investopedia in 2018 contends that regulation favors pharma companies large enough to have reliable sources of income. Unfortunately, Cliff in 2018 forwarded that lowering drug profits would make pharma less desirable for investors who might see more profits in other industries not regulated by price controls. This will hurt small business, with Grabowski in 2017 reporting that decreasing returns particularly affects young startups that require investment in particularly uncertain early-stage R&D.
Not the young
Overall, the Milken
startups.
Institute in 2016 indicates that private investment flows freely and investors will not hesitate to jump ship and find more profitable enterprises. Investors are already skeptical due to the high-risk nature of R&D investment, and price controls tipped it over the edge. For all these reasons, then guidance in 2015 of the American Action Forum confirms that every 10% increase in regulatory cost decreases the number of small businesses within an industry by 6%.
So you read R&D, but as one sentence with no real evidence or impacts, and now you're just moving on. Hey, sorry about that. I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I was disturbed. Okay. Very professional business here. Yeah, okay. So where we left off, we just heard an argument about R&D, which is like your entire offense here, right? Because it answers the AF. It's a turn on the AF. You want this good medicine, you want whatever, you want to save lives, solve like cheaper options, medicine for new diseases, all of these things. Like this is your biggest source of offense. Wasn't really talked about very much. It's just one sentence, so you even know the argument's there, but instead you're going for like small businesses and stuff like that. Like, is there even a compelling reason why medicine should be a profit-making endeavor? I'm not sure that there is. I mean, at this point, maybe you go for like econ collapse, but let's see.
In 2018, finding that after price controls were implemented in India, the market share of small firms decreased by 15%. The impact is decreased quality medicine. Small firms account for most of the innovation within pharma. Lawrence Norton in 2011 explains that big firms can make large revenues off of slowly improving multiple products, but small firms don't have the volume necessary to employ this strategy, which is why he concludes that small businesses have to focus on product innovation to make profits. Gellinger in 2018 empirically confirms.
Yeah, but do they? Like, you have broad like economic strategy, but what medical innovations, what pharmaceutical innovations were made by small firms? Like, just list them, right? Like, why are we talking in abstract here?
By finding that 62% of all new medicine approved by the FDA came from startups. This decrease in small business, White Landshow in 2005 indicates that any price controls lowers the probability of high-quality drugs being launched by 33%. Lichtenberg in 2003 terminalizes this.
Like, that's better, but it's still, like, what is it for? Like, what's going to happen without these drugs? Like, I need to understand that. If I wake up tomorrow and the AF has happened, what's different and why is it bad? Like, you're using all of these abstract general arguments without really contextualizing what effect this is going to have and who it's going to have that effect on.
Reporting that the average new drug saves 18,800 life years each year. The impact extends beyond the United States because Linda Durkis in 2016 explains that startups are leading the push to bring innovative medicine to the developing world at affordable prices, which is why John Wu in 2017 empirically confirms that pharmaceutical innovation has been responsible for a 73% increase in life expectancy across the developing world, thus negate.
If they're trying to bring affordable medicine to the developing world, how is a price cap going to affect them? Like, are the prices for these medicines going to be high or are they going to be low? If they're high, then you can't argue that they help the same amount of people or people in this like developing areas. If they're low, then they're not affected by the AF, right? You need to like cut your impacts to be much more specific to what we're talking about, right? That's what writing a case is. Otherwise, you're just reading an article that says pharmaceutical price controls and then just reading it out loud. Or not even doing that here, you're just paraphrasing it, right? The point of cutting a case is to take general evidence and make it tell a specific story that is compelling to the judge. And in this case, what's missing is I want to know what diseases these are treating so that I can have a sense of whether it's life and death. I like the 18,000 people lives saved by the average new medicine, but I'd like to know how affordable that medicine is. Because what you need to tell me is that there's 18,000 people saved every year from really expensive medicine that wouldn't have been made unless there was like a high profit margin. And you just don't have that story, right? You have bits and pieces in general. Oh, generally people don't like to invest. And then generally there's like stuff blah, 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 right? But I want you to find a specific instance. Here is a specific drug manufacturing company that is small, that needs high profit margin, that is reliant on investors, that made a drug that saved a bunch of lives, which it wouldn't have done if there were price controls. Thus, don't put in price controls, because then you don't have innovations like this. That's what I want. And if you don't have that, it just kind of seems like either you didn't do the work or your argument's full of shit, and that this like hypothetical scenario doesn't actually exist, that you're taking percentages from different places, that the 18,000 people saved are saved by the minority of drugs that are made by big companies, or that the 18,000 people who got saved by super cheap medicine, and the AF wouldn't affect it. Like, seems like you're skirting around, or just not doing the work.
I see two pieces of evidence. 57% are small. 70% of future industry.
Alright, do your cross-X. Who holds a laptop like that, bro? I don't understand. What's the downside to sharing your case with someone? You're gonna read all the words out loud. They're gonna hear it. Just show.
Talk about your first contention.
The round's being recorded, right? Like, just show them. Just have them read along.
Let's say the legislation is Advil costs $5 now. Give me a loophole.
All right, sure. So for example, Advil would say, okay, so for example, you could implement a loophole that says that when you import drugs, they're exempt from price controls. What Advil could do is they could load their Advil onto a truck, move it outside of the United States, move it back in, at which point it would count as an imported drug, and they just sell it at the same price.
Is there a bill that says this?
Yeah, i.e., when we tried to impose when we tried to impose price controls on lumber in the 70s, what happened was the lumber companies would simply transport their lumber outside the United States, at which point it would count as imported lumber.
Advil lumber?
What?
Is Advil lumber?
Yeah, it's a really
You still
bad
have
question.
to move the Advil. So like you can still put the Advil on a truck, move it outside the U.S.
I
and
would
move it back
say
in.
the legislation is pretty straightforward. It's going to say pharma companies can't charge this much more. You can't really make a loophole.
You can assume
but
that.
Even if your argument is true,
That's not a
it's
question.
like really abusive. It means that none of the pros advocacy has any ground. So I would say you either say it's abusive or you just say like you drop this contention.
I say
What?
it's correct, which is our argument is.
Dude, what? Yeah, no, really not liking the cross-X here. First of all, those aren't questions. I hate when people make arguments in cross-X. But secondly, like, the argument in question here is really bad, right? Like, and also the question, like, can you name a loophole? Like, the question isn't loopholes. The question is, you're right. Bad legislation would be ineffective. So we should pass good legislation, which is a vote for the AF, because that's the question in the resolution. Should there be price controls? Yes. Like, should there be price controls with loopholes? Like, no. And the argument that, like, you still gain impacts, right? Even if there's some loopholes, even if it's whatever, right? You're going to still improve the situation by some degree, and the degree to which you improve it is lives saved. It would be insane to think that this is a complete solvency takeout with zero impacts being generated by the AF.
Ultimately, that the most probable implementation of the affirmative ends up being rife with loopholes that ultimately make the legislation.
Isaac, you can have a question. Sure.
Okay. What's the internal link to this IP argument?
Oh,
Instead of asking about, like, oh, can you name another time that there were loopholes, what you should be asking about is, hey, like, what about this legislation on this other thing that had this effect? How about India? Hey, why aren't there loopholes in India? Like, you said that the pharmaceutical industry lost 15% of its, like, profit margin. Maybe it was some other number, but, like, didn't those companies want to not lose that money? Why weren't there loopholes then?
intellectual property.
Yeah.
We say monopolies in the U.S. buy up intellectual property from other countries, which means other countries can only buy the patented drugs from the U.S., which, because the prices are so high, 1.4 billion people in the developing world cannot afford their drugs. Can I ask you a question?
One follow-up, I'm still a little confused.
Of course.
Okay, so how do you solve all monopolies?
The monopolies are based in the U.S. You break them down in the U.S. affects the developing world IPs. Can I ask you a question?
Well, one more step further, like I'm still a little bit confused exactly how price controls directly impact all monopolies.
So it's like the same word for like.
Well, okay, they affect 3 monopolies. They affect 2%. Like, people have this like concept of solvency, especially when we're talking about the environment, that unless the AF or whoever can demonstrate that they solve for 100% of something, that they lose. Like, what? Like, why do they need to solve all monopolies? If the AF does more good than harm, do the AF. That's all we're talking about here.
Mergers and acquisitions, right? You have to buy up.
And the AF should just own up to that, right? Why are you trying to explain how you're going to solve all monopolies?
From other countries as well. If you don't have as much money, logically makes sense you can't buy up those patents.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you questions. All right. On your second initially talk about monopolies, you cite the Guinness evidence that says a 10% increase in regulatory costs puts 6% of small businesses out of business. Yeah, sure. Is that about the pharmaceutical industry?
It's in the context of small business, which
Okay, so
small
it's not.
sectors of the pharmaceutical industry
I
have.
think the simple answer is it's not about the pharmaceutical industry. What does the Guinness evidence assume?
What does the
are you
Guinness
trying to
evidence
tell me? Yeah.
assume?
So it assumes that there's not a monopoly in the market, which also makes sense, right? If there's a free market, regulation probably hurts small businesses.
I disagree.
But
Yeah,
if there's
I
a
really
monopoly, the small
don't
business
care
has
for
no
that
edge, and you have to break down the monopoly.
There's
Yeah,
a
he's
relative
great.
monopoly in just about every industry. In the case of big pharma, that would mean that this analysis still works both ways. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
None of these people are asking questions in a strategic way other than to say, like, isn't your argument wrong? To which the answer should be, no, my argument's not wrong. They're taking it a farther step and being like, isn't this what's wrong with your argument? Which, now you're just giving them more time to answer that refutation. Wouldn't you want them to have less time? Wouldn't you want to bring it up in your speech and then force them to defend it with like fewer opportunities? Maybe even drop the argument? Why would you like give them the platform to tell you you're wrong? A. B. These questions aren't strategic in the sense that they're not setting up for anything the other team doesn't understand, right? Like, you need to ask them questions that give you links to a different argument. That where you ask them the question and they don't see what you're trying to do, so they give you an answer that they think is safe, but actually you now use that against them. And it's going to be really hard for them to take back what they've said earlier. We have a video on asking effective questions that kind of goes more into this, and I don't have a ton of time, so we'll keep going.
Okay, so your evidence indicates that drug prices are increasing by 27% every year. Is that correct?
We read 10% at the top.
Okay,
But like, if you give us 27, that's good.
okay, and no, okay. So then you say,
Look at your timer.
it's gonna be good.
Debaters do this all the time, especially like novices or whatever. They'll just talk, and then there will be a timer, and then they'll get cut off in the middle of a sentence by the timer. Just look at the timer while you're speaking. Look at the timer while you're in cross-ex. Plan what you're saying around that. It just looks really bad, and it's also, man, it looks very amateurish, and it's just strategically, like, you don't want to get cut off by the timer. Try to just look at it. It's not that weird a concept. Okay.
Is everyone ready? All right. First off, we're already ahead in this debate on probability. Their arguments are very speculative. The fact that somehow lobbying is going to poke all of these loopholes into it and all small businesses are going to go belly up is very improbable. Whereas the moment you vote for Andrew and I, you directly reduce prices, you directly save consumers. That's 100% probable. Well, let's get into their contentions. Their first argument talks about lobbying, but there's so many issues with this. First of all, the moment you affirm, you fiat that the policy is passed immediately. There isn't time for all this lobbying to go underway. There isn't time for loopholes to develop. Secondly, the example that they give is you're going to drive a truck out into Canada and import it back in. That's still not a loophole. In the United States, they can only charge at a certain cost. There isn't a loophole when you're directly setting the price in the first place. That's why price controls are direct in the resolution. But thirdly, given the current climate of how price controls are being implemented, there's no probability that's going to be implemented through Congress. Back in August, President Trump has been passing executive orders to limit the pharmaceutical industry by limiting things like the gag rule. Trump isn't going to be lobbied by the pharmaceutical companies. We can still pass it through the executive branch. But fourthly and finally, even if you think that lobbying is incredibly bad, we are the only team that has a risk of stopping lobbying in the future. Because if you limit their capacity with the sue evidence, we reduce their revenue by 20%, then they no longer have the capacity to lobby bills in the first place in Congress, which means we're the only risk of stopping them from...
Yeah, that's the easy turn, right? Like, if they lobby with profits and we hurt their profits, don't we hurt their ability to lobby? This is pretty good. These are a lot of good answers. I think you're spending a lot of time on a lot of reasons why a clearly bad argument is bad. So hopefully you don't run out of time before you get into the good stuff. But also, I think you need to be labeling these responses a little bit better. Most people, I hope, have heard of four-step refutation. And the step that a lot of people leave out is the therefore, step 4. This debater isn't contextualizing these answers into any actions for the judge to take, like, which means you can't blah blah blah, which means don't vote on this argument, and try to like explain how the argument can't function. It doesn't have a link, it doesn't blah blah blah, which isn't super common language in public forum as far as I'm aware, given what I've judged in person or done analysis videos of, but I think it's a really effective and useful thing for people to start doing.
Poking loopholes in every single piece of pharmaceutical legislation to come in the future, so we also...
The answer that's also missing is, here's all these other regulations that, like, are effective. Why would this one be different? There's lobbies for a million things, right? Okay.
Away on the time frame of the argument as well. But more specifically, they're just using this to bolster their argument on small businesses because they're going to be saying small businesses are disproportionately hurt with their second intention. But there are a couple of uniqueness issues right off the bat. Their evidence that talks about how new drugs are only being produced by small companies is because the industry is so efficient, we're only letting people with 50 or fewer employees producing it in the first place. Light of Stanford explains in 2014 that 90% of all new drugs that are coming out of the industry are clinically insignificant Me Too drugs that are essentially just changing Advil to ibuprofen and not benefiting people in the developing world per their impact says. This is a reason to turn the argument in our favor, because in a world of price controls, the only drugs that have any profit margin for small businesses and big pharmaceutical companies to invest in are the ones that cure things like cancer, cure diseases like Alzheimer, and have clinical significance in the first place. But secondly, if...
Why? First of all, you're not answering the argument that says each new drug saves 18,000 lives, which is their only offense. So I don't know how you're not seeing that as something to answer. Hopefully you do talk about that, because it's literally their only offense. But I also don't see why people wouldn't make generic drugs with price controls. Like, you're telling me someone is taking Advil, turning it to ibuprofen, and then skyrocketing the cost? Like, no. Like, I don't see how price controls plays any role. You're taking a cheap drug, you're making your own version of it. How is a price control going to get in the way of that? This story isn't very clear. On top of not being responsive to their evidence that says new drugs saves lives.
There's a monopoly in the industry. Small businesses are not being helped. That's why we reviewed the source tester evidence in our second link.
You need to be saying who gives a shit about small businesses, right? Like, at the end of the day, you want the judge to vote on one impact. And in order for them to vote on that one impact, they have to think it's the most important impact in the round. So as early as possible, start making those comparisons. Look, this impact just doesn't matter as much as this other impact. Still do the link refutation stuff, still do the turns and whatever, but start setting up the idea that this argument is more important. When everyone goes for every argument, the judge is left with like 16 things to vote for, and the more options you give a judge, the more likely they are to just make some random decision that neither team really wanted to make. And people think that this is just bad judging. People think that, like, if they had flow judges or circuit judges or whatever bullshit high school term they have, that, like, these things wouldn't happen. Like, I don't understand who they think these judges are. I made a post on the subreddit yesterday or the day before, and because DVC's thinking about making an invitational tournament, and I was just like, all right, well, what do you guys want to be different from other tournaments? The only feedback I got was, which I'm not upset about, but the only feedback I got was like better judges. And I was like, okay, have you been to a tournament that you thought had good judges? And pretty much everyone said no. So it's like, people constantly complain about the quality of the judges when they've never been to a tournament that was different. Why is your expectation that you're going to have a lot of flow judges when you've never been to a tournament that had that? When the chief complaint in forensics for decades has been the quality of the judges. I'm going to see what we can do about that, and as a large college program, we have a lot more people we can put in the judging pool, but the point is that people need to be thinking that was a complete tangent. My point is that even experienced judges, right? It's not that they're lay. We have this weird perception that when judges make unclear decisions or weird decisions, it's because they're bad at debate. It's because you're not collapsing. What you need to be doing is make the debate about one question. You tell the judge, Judge, all that matters in this debate is one question. Do you believe blank? Because if you believe blank, then you have to believe, if you believe X, you have to believe Y, and we've proven that Y is the most important issue in this debate, right? They conceded Y, they've conceded that it's the most important issue in the debate, so now let me just spend my last speech just telling you why you should believe X. And then on that ballot, I guarantee, no matter who it is, there's either going to be a reason why they believe X or a reason why they don't believe X. And if you're pretty sure X is true, then they're probably going to believe it, and you win that round, or you don't, and you figure out how to get better. But you're not going to get these weird things. People complain about, like, oh, I voted for them. The judge voted for whoever was the best in cross-X. Like, yeah, because you didn't give them a clear place to vote. So that is why you can't just go like, oh, actually, here's all our links to small businesses. Just say who gives a shit. There's no analysis given by the negative about why small businesses actually matter, except for these weird, washy links to this $18,000 deaths argument. So other than that one argument, none of it matters. And you're not even answering that one argument. All you need to do is answer the 18,000 people's lives get saved, either by delinking it or recontextualizing it, or like delinking it by saying like those aren't the drugs that get affected by price controls. But also just outweighing it. Yeah, yes, but hundreds of thousands of people die from whatever. So all in all, it's more lives saved than lost. And that's really the job of this speech. Take out the offense and set up your offense. And I don't think anyone here is really focusing on big picture offense. They're just chasing rabbits, right? They just hear arguments, and every argument is like another thing for them to try to go after. And they think a good debater is the one that makes answers to a million things. But no, a good debater is the one that wins the ballot, and the way you need to do that is by consolidating the focus, by having one really good argument and just making everything in the debate about that. Like, nope, that doesn't matter because I still have that one argument. Nope, that doesn't happen because of this one argument. And forcing your opponent to have to engage with it. And when they can't beat it, your opponent's like, yeah, that was a dope argument. Anyway, I've now burned a ton of time. How much time do we have? Am I late? 27. We can do another half hour. And, I don't know, maybe we'll just, skip ahead? I don't know.
The 64% of the market is controlled by one company. Small businesses do not have a competitive edge right now. They're being price gouged by the larger industries, which stops them from starting up in the first place, because no one's going to invest in a market that has a monopoly in it in the first place, which is why all of their evidence, the Giddis analysis and the Dean analysis, are all about general small businesses that aren't specific to the pharmaceutical industry whatsoever. Of course, if there's a free market, regulatory costs would probably hurt them, but because there's a monopoly, we're the only one with the risk of helping small businesses in the future. Let's go on to their specific arguments in their specific links. They say that regulatory burdens are going to disproportionately hurt small businesses, but that's not true either. Small businesses can produce things at a lower price point in a low...
That's not true is not a very good refutation. The reason why it's not a very good refutation is because, and I got into like an argument on the subreddit about this, saying like, that's not true is not the kind of responses you should be trying to make. You should be focusing on like outweighing or turns or something. But and then people were like, "Oh, that's you weighing matters," but and that's just code for like, yeah. I don't actually understand how important weighing impacts is. Anytime someone's like, yeah, this thing matters, but like, they don't get it, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter is that, like, unless the negative is atrocious at finding good evidence, their expert is probably right. And somebody said that that was a logical fallacy because of something P.Z. Myers said. But what P.Z. Myers was talking about was saying an argument is true because one expert says it is a fallacy. That's, yeah, I agree with that. But saying that experts' opinions on the field of their expertise is better informed and more likely to be correct than a non-expert's is not a logical fallacy. I'm more inclined to believe the person who wrote the article about small businesses or whatever than whatever this high school student is about to pull up in his 2 weeks of research he did on this. Like, you're just not going to convince me, probably. But let's see. Like, maybe, like, I understand saying that's not true because of the way the negative is combining evidence to reach their conclusions. But just to be like, this expert isn't right is not a compelling argument.
Area. So if anything, price controls stop price gouging by leveling the playing field for small businesses to compete with big pharmaceutical companies as well.
You're not even citing a card here.
They kind of, both of their warrants about skepticism and investment are all based on the same assumption that an investor or a small business isn't going to start up in the first place. But there are a couple of problems with this. The first one comes from the Brookings Institute, who explains in 2018 that 2% of all investment in the sector comes from venture capitalists in the first place, so it's a very small scope of the argument here. But again, on top of that, Zealand of the INC explains that venture capitalist investment is extremely bad for small businesses because they're reliant on a short-term make back my money ideology, which is why a lot of these small businesses that start up are destined to fail in the future because they're just prioritizing short-term gains over long-term success in the first place. But on top of all of this, their link is that costs are going to go down. But in a world of price controls, that...
Another issue with this speech is it starts out by pointing out that the AF is winning on issues of probability, because the negative is just making weird conjecture and predictions about the future based on highly generalized evidence. All of that is true, which means that you should probably lean into your strength and talk about, like, look, maybe some shit will happen, maybe some shit won't, but what we know for sure is that there are currently 100 million diabetics or pre-diabetics. The price of insulin is going high. There's people who are needing medicine right now but can't afford it. Price caps are going to decrease the price of insulin, and these people can fucking not die this week because they're rationing their insulin. Blank percent of people in diabetic families are like rationing and sharing their insulin. Very few people who have diabetes and are in poverty are taking the prescribed amount of insulin because they can't afford it. Diabetics are much more likely to be poor. Diabetics are much more likely to be black. Killer Mike, I think it was did a thing with Bernie Sanders where he's talking about, like, people need to see diabetes as a black issue. Like, this is all you need to be talking about, right? Like, the stuff where it's not conjecture. People can't afford it. This week they will die unless we do this. So you can have all your hypothetical small business bullshit, but this is guaranteed and it is immediate. But instead we're going into, no, that's not how the small business would work. It would work this way, and that's not how the thing is going to thing. It's going to blah, blah, blah. And you're not really using your strength. You're just doing the exact same thing that you said was a weakness of your opponent. So just figure out what your story is. It's all about storytelling. It's all about storytelling. A.J. Moorhead, one of the most successful speakers in college forensics history, was on this podcast. It's really good. It's called Figure of Speech. And anyway, he was talking about how he thinks all of the different events in forensics are all just interp. And I'm not sure that I totally agree on that, but the point is that it is all advocacy, and the things that make advocacy effective in interp don't just stop existing because it's a debate, right? Like, telling a story doesn't stop being persuasive. I'm not saying it's a hypothetical story, but frame things in human experiences because your judge is a human being that makes most of the decisions in their lives on emotional impulses. So why are we ignoring that?
Can be subsidized by the public sector. The Los Angeles Times explains that 73% of all of the new clinically significant drugs have come from the National Institute of Health in the public sector. Engelberg of Healthcare Magazines explains why this is a reason to vote against them. Because when you implement price controls and you don't have to spend as much on things like Medicare and Medicaid, you can divert $80 billion in government funding to new innovation grants in the future, which is why our money towards innovation is a lot better than theirs.
Okay, that was an okay speech. I liked a lot of the beginning, but there were just a couple things the speech needed to do, right? What you needed to do was talk about how the first contention on the negative just doesn't have any real links, which you do, and it doesn't have any impact, which you don't really talk about. But beyond that, all I want is to hear why the 18,000 people aren't going to die, or why, if they are going to die, we outweigh that somehow. And I'm not really getting that. Instead, I'm getting a whole bunch of other shit that I just don't care about. Like, no matter what, in this debate, I will not vote on small businesses. And I think most judges probably won't either, unless they're, I don't know, unless I don't think they're good judges. Point being, you're focusing on shit that doesn't matter. We've established people are gonna die.
It's gonna be
Both sides have made that argument.
I'll just start with the probability on the next.
Clearly the biggest argument.
Is
So
that good?
why is that not what
Are
you're
you going
focusing
from
on?
probability and then frontlining, or probability then on
Probability and then CSU.
Okay.
Everyone good? Alright.
Also, like, not to not to trash talk anybody. I think everyone in this debate is wonderful and every judge is doing great. But when people are like, are you going in this order? Or are you going, like asking about the roadmap, and then like I look over and they're flowing on one sheet of paper. Like, they'll tell you, like, you'll figure it out. Like, just move the paper around, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know that clarity is like that significant at this speed with this method of flowing. Anyway.
Start on probability. Recognize nothing is more probable than the status quo. That's why we were telling you that 67% of all businesses in the status quo are small businesses, innovate the best. But even more so, I would argue that prices are decreasing in the status quo. More on that later. Then go to our second.
Yeah, great. Nothing is more probable than the status quo is a solid argument. But what that means is that you need to be arguing that the status quo is good, and that the affirmative risks changing that. So your status quo good argument, right now you have access to the 18,000 people's lives get saved. I don't see any other like strong offense you're getting from the status quo. So let's see what you go for.
About like basically monopolies. They tell you from Stanford that 90% of all innovation is bad because it just accesses Me Too drugs. But the problem is small businesses have a vested interest in not creating Me Too drugs because our evidence tells you that small businesses only generate profits off 2 or 3 drugs. That means if you have a price control of those 3 or 2 drugs become less profitable, that's what forces them to even merge into bigger companies who actually do Me Too drugs. Me Too drugs, in order to do Me Too drugs, you need to have a vast capability of distributing medicine, and these small businesses don't have that. That's why they don't do businesses. But then there's
Doesn't Me Too drugs just create competition, which drives down a price? Like, if there's Advil and ibuprofen and they're the exact same thing, I'm gonna buy the cheaper one. Like, isn't that the argument you need to be making?
second response talks about small businesses and monopolies. But recognize right now we're telling you from India, historically, empirically, this is on our side. When India implemented price controls, they saw a decrease in 15% of small businesses because of the regulatory costs. But even more so, I would argue the other frontline applies even more so because we're telling you from our chain evidence that it is counterproductive. Then they go on to like our solvency arguments about skepticism. He tries to group skepticism and investment. They tell you from Virgins that only 2% is venture capital, and he says that VC is bad because it's short term. No, VC is good because it incentivizes people to innovate in a short time. That's why we're seeing that 67% of all small firms who receive money is super good. But then he talks about the NIH and the public sector. Recognize the public sector and the NIH still needs money from private investors. Investors as a
There's also a lot of good arguments that you could be talking about with the whole investment thing. You don't really have great links to it. It's kind of non-unique. But like rarer, less sexy diseases don't get as much funding because there's fewer people who have it. So when you have this medical system that's entirely based off of like venture capital, short-term profits, trying to like create medicine for people with rare blood diseases, isn't that appealing. But if we had a more socialized medical system, we would be treating those. They'd be getting attention and be easier. And then probably that saves a large number because, generally rare diseases add up. But, yeah, I don't know that it necessarily fits this debate because I don't know that price control creates that.
whole are a good thing, and they just tell you that VC is bad, but I would argue investment as a whole is a prereq because investment needs to come first. Now let's go on to their case. Recognize that they talk about like the market.
You need to extend this 18,000 number. What? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
But their uniqueness evidence is super bad. Prices are going down for 6 reasons. First is self-awareness. Kelly Barnes explains that recent price hikes amid frustrating news, which has companies worrying about bad press and legislative actions, which is why she concludes that pharma companies are decreases prices to avoid this. Second is discounts. Gillen 18 reports that 40% of all drugs are subject to discounts. Third is negotiations. Livington in 2017 explains that large insurance companies were able to decrease the price of drugs by 21% through negotiation. Fourth is generics. And the AAM explains that 90% of all prescriptions were filled in 2017 were for generic brands, which do not cost that much in the first place. They tell you the generics are like super expensive, but I would argue they need to tell you how expensive they are and how many people can afford them. But the fifth response is that public programs. Shepard in 2017 explains that programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, and 340B and other programs deflate the price of drugs, and the people who need or people who are poor access through these drugs through those programs. But the sixth response is recent legislation. Vasquez stressed in October that when Trump passed the gag clause legislation on October 10th, it decreased the bill that the Americans had to fill. Andre furthers that this legislation saved the average American consumer $147 million. This is
none of this. It's all good. It's all fine analysis. it's going to be really easy for any affirmative team that knows what they're doing to just come up and read evidence that says the cost of medicine right now is too high for a significant number of people. All of this is arguments for why there's negotiations and drives the price down, and like Trump is doing this thing and that's driving the price down, and they have generics and blah blah blah. You don't say how many people. That part actually was the best kind of analytic, because the affirmative does need to be saying what drugs are too expensive, how many people need it, how many people are dying. But I feel like it's going to be pretty easy to take. I mean, at the end of the day, no, the status quo is not good with the number of people who can't afford medicine in America. And the negative strategy should not be to go in and try to win that it is. Which is why your only real offense is the 18,000 people that have their lives saved every time a new medicine comes out, which you're not extending. Like, understanding what not to go for will help you shift your focus. So everyone's trying to go for everything, but that's just leading to you dropping threads that are actually the most important thing. It's not bad debating to say, sure, that thing is true, but it doesn't matter because. In fact, that is excellent debating.
Why the Kaiser Foundation concludes that out-of-pocket expenditures have decreased by drugs by 14% in the last 5 years. But then, let's go into their first point. They talk about directly settling. Recognize our Morton and Bowler evidence indicates, like Saul's back for this, because it tells you that most small firms only make their money off 1 or 2 drugs. This means that if you have price controls, those 1 or 2 drugs cannot become as profitable. That's what forces these larger companies to buy up these smaller companies, which means that if you allow these smaller companies to create good hit-or-miss drugs, that's what keeps them in business, because then they can't be bought out, and that's what creates the incentive for them to not be bought out. But then you can also look at the Dean evidence from InCase. They find that after price controls were implemented in India, the market share of small firms decreased by 50%. That's just what's empirically true. But then on the second point about consolidation, the first act has all the risk of hurting small businesses. Our uniqueness evidence makes it very clear that 50% of pharma companies are small businesses, and 63% of new drugs come from these terms. The second response is that in their world, big firms have a huge incentive to increase mergers, as decreased revenue means companies will not be able to take as much risk and will have to resort to stealing drugs from seller markets through M&A. But the third response is that make them give an example of a country who implemented price controls and saw a market control of monopolies decline. If they can't do that, I would argue you have to defer to India. But fourth, recognize that high costs of development are the root cause of market consolidation. Companies cannot afford to do it by themselves. The AF has a 100% risk of making this worse by decreasing the very revenue that is used to offset the costs in the first place. The status quo is solving and the status quo is good. But then let's go on to the first impact. They talk about waxing. But recognize, if I break my thumb and I don't take painkillers, I'm not going to die. Make them prove to you how many people die as a direct result of prescriptions. Their second one talks about the rest of the world. But recognize,
if you break your thumb and you don't take painkillers, you're not going to die. So we shouldn't care that you have a broken thumb and you're suffering? Like, human suffering isn't an impact in your mind? It's only when they die that we care?
IP rights can only be bought once. That means that their impacts don't actually matter, because if they're bought once, they've already happened. It's super non-unique. Then you can turn their arguments, because I would argue that there's more shortages. Price controls amplify drug shortages, as the Hill explains that pharmaceutical firms have to underwrite a negotiating process in a controlled market every time they want to sell a new medication. That's why drugs in America reach the market 90 days quicker, and they quantify 90 days quicker than in Europe, which kills 300,000 people in Europe. I would argue that drugs happen quicker in the affirmative, in the negative world, which is why you negate.
Look, the impacts of the negative are a quantifiable impact. They're not quantified, but they're quantifiable. Your impact is that every time a new drug comes out, 18,000 people get saved. And there is a 15% decrease in market shares and owned by small businesses, and they control X% of new drug innovation. Don't remember what the exact number is, but it's a percent of a percent of a percent of a percent till we get to, okay, how many fewer new drugs will there actually be per year? Multiply that by 18,000. That's how many lives get saved. that number isn't quantified. I'm going to say generously, let's say a few 100,000 people. The number of people who need but can't afford EpiPens, need but can't afford insulin, is so much staggeringly higher than that I don't understand how the negative could have at any point thought they would win the outweigh argument on that against a team that knows what they're doing. Maybe they just don't hit enough of those teams to like understand that that's what people are going to do. But literally the strategy of the negative is to have no offense and say the status quo is solving, the status quo is good. And if the affirmative can't answer that, then they need to completely reframe how they're thinking about debate. Right? Like it's like chess in a lot of ways. There's a lot going on, but the win condition is the checkmate. And before you make any move in chess, you need to be looking at their king. Do you have options for a checkmate? How close are you? How do you develop towards that? Then you look at your king. Do they have options for a checkmate? How close are they? Do you have options for deterring that? There's all sorts of interactions happening in other places on the board between other pieces, and those matter, but they only matter in terms of their utility towards this checkmate question. What I'm seeing in this debate is people like capturing pawns and being like, great, I have like 8 points because I captured 8 pawns. But not acknowledging that that has no actual function in winning or losing if you're not getting the checkmate. And in fact, that's a bad strategy. If you're really good at getting pawns, but doing it isn't like, oh, I got their queen, but I also got checkmated. Like, that's not good chess. And it's not good debate. Which sounds really mean. It is good debate. These people are really, really good. I said at the beginning of this analysis video that because all of these people know what they're doing, they're experienced, they're phenomenal speakers, the criticism just has to be the next step up. Harsher, more nitpicky, more in terms of big picture strategy stuff, which is my favorite thing about parliamentary debate, because it has such a big focus on big picture strategy, because that's the stuff that carries over from round to round, topic to topic. I think with single topic formats or formats that have, like a different topic every month, people are so focused on the specific evidence for that topic that they don't really develop the vocabulary or the sort of focus on big picture debate strategy in abstract rather than in specific rounds and specific arguments, specific evidence. Let's watch this cross-X, and hopefully we get the affirmative to ask questions like, how many people have diabetes? But let's see. Or just getting them to say, like, okay, can we agree that you saved this many people? Right? Like, that's really what your cross-X strategy should be. You're going to outweigh it. You just need a number. So try to get that number, right? Like, how many people are we going to kill by doing this? Let's get a number. Like I said, it's an objective question, right? We have only a finite number of drugs. The only, like, death, we don't have, like, an econ collapse argument, right? The only death that the affirmative generates is by stopping some percentage of new drugs. So try to get an answer for that, what that is, so that later you can come up and say the AF wins if we can outweigh this number. And then spend the rest of the debate just proving you beat that number.
Actually, can I see a picture of that? Pretty close. Yeah. The non-unique read on the bottom.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay. So you say that small businesses don't produce Me Too drugs, so why would they be disproportionately hurt by price control?
No, yeah. So the analysis is that if small businesses only have a chance of making revenue because they produce like 2 or 3 drugs that are hit or miss, when you implement price controls, that creates a huge,
So, well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, if 90% of all drugs that are being produced out of the industry as a whole, inclusive of small businesses, are just Me Too drugs, right? So if small businesses don't produce Me Too drugs, then why would they be hurt by price control?
Repeat the question.
So if small businesses don't produce Me Too drugs, then why would they be hurt by a price control?
Because if you sell a drug, you need to make money, and we're telling you that the good drugs also can't make money if you have a price
But if
control.
they create a cure for, like, all drug prices, like Advil's not going to be like the same price as like a cancer cure, right?
But what? Yeah, that's the.
Okay, so our argument is
That's
the more
generics.
efficient drugs, the ones that have clinical significance, still create profit margins.
The argument is about speculation. These investors, right, when they
Okay.
see a market. Okay, so
2% of the funding for them, but yeah.
all in venture capitalists is 2%, but all
Yeah.
investors is like
So who are the
huge
other- who are
more,
the
right?
other investors?
So
Huge margin. We don't have an evidence for it though. Like, we don't have a number. We don't have a sort of citation.
as a whole, when they see a market in healthcare which has price controls, or they see a market like, I don't know, in Silicon Valley without price controls, comparatively
Who are
speaking,
the other
they go to the
investors?
market without price controls
Yeah.
because that's where the most investment is.
Where's the market without price controls?
Silicon Valley, green technology, Isaac could keep going. He's
Okay,
got a
so
lot
they're
of-
just going
Where
to
is
not
it
invest in
post-plant?
pharmaceuticals. So a pharmaceutical venture capitalist is
That's not the question. Okay, we make it so that we have price controls. Where are they going to go? Now, the answer to that is in things that aren't pharmaceuticals, but like Mexico, like where are they going to go?
invest there and they're going to invest in some other form of
Venture capitalists are venture capitalists.
Yes.
They want money. They invest in the most profitable market,
Yes.
which I would argue is not a market with price controls.
So it's
like
venture, so it is
logically
venture
true.
capitalists then, right?
What?
So it is venture capitalists.
Investors, semantics is not the issue, right? Investors care about money and they want to make money.
My argument
so
is
they
that
would go
private
to places
investors are only
without price
2%
controls.
of the entire investment that the entire funds that the industry
does your card talk about venture capitalists or investors as a whole?
Like, what's the difference? That was my original question.
All right, we'll just
Like,
call for it and then we can move on.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. So let's talk about. So what I said in my rebuttal was that I asked you to give me an example of a country where you had price controls and then the market share of monopolies decreased.
Okay, so you want me to give you an example?
Yeah.
Norway?
Do you have evidence?
Yeah.
All right, we'll call for that too. Okay.
So, the Dean evidence. Let's talk about your empiric in India.
Wait, real quick.
Wait, no,
All
my
right,
turn.
I just thought of something.
So,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Dean evidence, does it talk about small businesses or generic drugs?
What do you mean?
So,
I mean,
we found the Dean evidence, and it
Okay.
says generics, like generic manufacturers, which are the same thing as Me Too drugs.
Wait, no,
Right.
you're talking about
So-
India, right?
Yes, India. Like, we have the Dean evidence. It's
Okay,
talking
okay.
about generics.
No. It talks about generic small firms. But those small firms in India aren't the same type of small firms as the small firms in America. That's why
Was there a
67%.
monopoly in India?
What?
Was there a monopoly in the market in
The
India?
the market share of small businesses decreased.
Was there a monopoly there?
That's what a monopoly means. Like if small businesses decrease, that means
No.
that the merger.
That's not the same thing.
Later in the article, he concludes that the smaller businesses got bought out by the larger businesses, and they in essence merged.
So that's what your argument is. They're going to be increased mergers and acquisitions.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So can I see normal?
So hopefully talking about what I'm hoping to see and hoping to hear in that cross-ex before we get into it gives you a sense of why I would be frustrated during that cross-ex, right? Where you're just so focused on something that I just do not understand the relevance of. Like, what? who cares? What, like, those aren't leading to any impact in the round. And the impact is what I'm voting on. So what? Just... Okay. It's hard to predict the winner of this because neither team is really extending their good offense. And I think a lot of this also has to do with public forum teams just generally. I think what they do is they split up, like, oh, I'll write the case, you write answers. But what that means is that you're not extending your partner, right? You're not, like, being able to make outweigh arguments because you don't know what you're outweighing with. You don't know what your strategy for winning is, what, like, is embedded in your case in order to try to win. So it's hard for you to work that, do that, use that is the word I'm looking for, against your opponents. And now we're going to have the first speakers come up, and they basically just extend the first speech and not really carry across a lot of the second speech. Yeah, I don't think that's a good model for writing cases. I think people should be writing their first speech together, regardless of who's speaking it. People should be writing their blocks together. It's because you both have a responsibility for understanding what that's saying and how to implement it and what role it plays in your greater strategy. Let's see how we're doing on time. Also, if this is actually recording, because I would probably jump off a bridge. Oh shit, it's 10:58. Yeah, we're gonna stop there. All in all, this is... Whoa, that's not what I meant to do. Here we go. Ooh. Okay. Whoa, lag. All in all, this is a good round. I think all of the debaters there, well, I mean, this was 2 years ago, so who knows what happened with them after that, should be proud of their performance. But I also think they're just not getting the right big picture coaching. I think that what they've been taught is to be hyper analytical of what a particular piece of evidence says, and less so taught to be strategic and sort of think of the game that they're playing in terms of what are the win conditions embedded in this affirmative. Like, what are the ways the affirmative wins? What are the impacts we go for? What are the ways we can weigh that? And then understanding what it takes to win under that, right? Like, oh, we're going for drugs are too expensive, people are dying. So that means if we can win that death is the most important impact and that we prevent more than we save, then we should win, regardless of what the negative says, right? Like, doesn't matter what the negatives arguments are, as long as we can show this is the most important thing and it happens, then you win. So, wow, the lag is really bad. I wonder if it'll get fixed in the final video? Maybe not. Anyway, that's what I think is lacking. Thanks. If I had to make a prediction on who's going to win that, probably on a split decision, the AF is going to win, because ultimately I think judges are going to have to step in and do a lot of the work, or maybe the back half of the debate is a lot better in terms of really focusing on the issues that matter than the front half. But yeah, I mean, I think the AF just has a stronger case generally speaking. I think both the AF speakers kind of like fail to miss the point of their own AF. Fail to, they miss the point of their own AF. But yeah, that's what I got. Hope you like it. Let me know what other videos you want me to make or do. It can be round analysis videos. It can be whatever. Like I mentioned, I'm busy as shit. But my last day off work was January 2nd. And my next day off work is going to be March 21st. So I'm kind of dying. But, my work days aren't all that busy. And if I'm motivated, I can make a video. Anyway, hope this is watchable because the lag here is really bad.